Hi, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Inside Insights, a podcast powered by Zappy. I am your host, Ryan Barry, and I am joined today by a very special guest, Joel Renkema, the head of Insights from IKEA. Joel and I wasted half of our time shooting the shit with each other. I wish we could have recorded all of it, but Joel, thank you for being on the podcast today, and I'm very excited to talk with you.
For sure. Likewise, been looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. We've actually been doing business together for a long time, but we only really got to know each other in the last year, and I'm really pleased with the friendship we've struck up and just sharing ideas with each other and kind of pushing the thinking. So I'm just very excited to kind of dive in with you today. I want to start with something, and this is going to be funny because it's not even on my script. I want to start with something that you've been doing recently, and I'm sure it's not new for you, but you've been posting a lot more about your journey with exercise. And I thought of this morning because I was doing a HIIT class in my basement, and I was kind of curious a little bit more of your why, and I was hoping we could share a little bit. But it seems like exercise plays a huge role in your life and how you stay centered. So why don't we just start there, like get to know you as a human a little bit, and how that journey has been going for you.
Good idea. Good plan. Look, I think there's so much here, right? And we only have limited. I can't take the whole podcast just for this one. But actually, a funny story. When I was back at university and actually all the time through school, my ideal job was to be a strength and conditioning coach, right? I didn't want to do business. Business was boring. Why would I want to do that? I
Oh,
want to be a strength and conditioning
interesting.
coach or a physio. So I actually qualified and finished universities as exercise physiology, right? I always wanted to go that way. But then I quickly learned that's a lot of work, right? And not much money for a lot of work. So the value equation wasn't really there. Whereas business is a bit of the opposite in a way. So then what I always therefore did was keep business as a job, but keep strength and conditioning as like that hobby around it. And therefore your passion never becomes a job because then you're kind of like you're mixing it and then you get stuck in the sort of the operations of it. So it's always sort of been there. But back in the days where I used to live in Singapore, it was a big thing of, I think physical activity is a massive enabler for so much, right? Like social health. You build community through physical activity, and we did in many places as well. You build emotional health, you bring mental health, you bring so many aspects, right? Just through physical activity. Because the reality is, and I won't preach this for too long, but the reality is we were born to move, right? You don't
Yeah,
move
we
your
were.
joints, you don't have joints. It's factual, right? We're not born to sit on the couch, right? We're not designed to sit on the couch. Our bodies are designed to move. So if you're going to do anything in life well, you need to move. But I've started to recently post a little bit more about it because I think there's so much in it in terms of for people to connect in. And especially on LinkedIn, man, so much of it is AI this and technology this and that. There's kind of like very topical things. I think in places like LinkedIn, I think we need to be human sometimes too. And it's like, I'm going through this, I'm experiencing that, I'm doing that. What about you and that community aspect of it? So, and the amount of reactions I get from people in terms of like, oh, I've started to train now, or I've started to do this now is super cool because it's just
That's so
encouraging it
gratifying.
more.
Yeah.
And that goes into, I think, your point of like the broader why, right? I've said to my teams for a long time, it's like, I love business, I love brand, I love insights, I love all this kind of stuff. But when I retire, I'm not going to remember the revenue growth of fiscal 24. I'll never remember that. But I will remember the people I worked with and the people that helped me and the people that I helped in the relationships I had and the experiences that I had. So I think that goes back to the why part. It's like whatever I may post, whatever I may do, constructing the day, it's about the people side of it, right? And what you're leaving behind and imparting and enabling and building. So yeah.
That's gold, man. I love the acknowledgement that I can still have this passion. It doesn't need to be my job. My wife's actually a physical trainer, and she
Awesome.
does work very hard for her money. But the giving back is important.
Mm.
I wanted to validate something. If you don't follow Joel on LinkedIn, you should. He will give you a break from AI. By the way, I completely agree with you. I had somebody call me this weekend. By call, I mean email. And they were listening to another episode of the podcast, and it was basically with McDonald's, right? They're doing some really cool shit with menu innovation. What tool can I buy to do that? And it took everything I had in my soul to be like, it's the same damn tool you use, you just use it wrong. And the reason I bring that up in our discussion is, as we were discussing before we hit record, we're both fathers, and like the human side of things is going to cascade regardless of what happens in
Mm,
technology. And so
mm.
I guess just heavy plus one for all of us to share how we're connecting, how we're being clear in our brains, because that's what's going to matter in 20 years, not
Yeah.
what version of the model we bought.
The models will come and go, man. That's the thing.
They
It's
will.
like I presented a couple of weeks ago at another company. This whole like, if you look at the industry for a long time around insights or data or analytics, we've often pendulum swinged it, right? It's like AI is
Yes.
going to change the world, and we don't need people anymore, just machines. Or brand equity surveys are dead. It's all about social listening, and it's all this massive pendulum thing. But what withstands all the time is your people and how you work and what you do and what you bring to it, right? The models, the machines, the things, they're going to come and go. The people won't. And so how we invest in each other as people and as individuals, I think, is super important. So
Well, I'm sure you've read the book written in 1935, I believe, by Dale Carnegie, How to Make Friends and Influence People. You could read it. If you haven't read it, by the way, do yourself a
should.
favor. Um, you could read it today and it's never been more true, because there's some things about people that don't
Mm.
actually change. We were born to move, as an example.
Yeah.
But so let me tell you a story. So I played sports as a kid,
Mm.
and then really like dove into career, and I did activities, right? So I played sports, played baseball, soccer, other things in the evenings with my friends, all through my 20s. But I never really exercised. Now I hiked, I skied. I'm
Mm.
an active human, but I
Yeah.
didn't have like a daily regimen.
Mm.
I'm listening to a podcast in March, no, mid-April of 2020. And there's this dude, and by the way, I don't even really listen to podcasts, but there's this dude who's like a pretty well-to-do venture capital guy. I don't know why I was listening to the interview. I just remember what he said, which is every day I get my heart rate up for 20 minutes. 20 minutes is not a lot of time. Everybody has 20 minutes. And you know when you hear something and it cuts across every wire you have in your brain? That
Yeah.
was that day for me. And so it's been 4 years of daily exercise. And from a mental health perspective, it's amazing. We both have intense jobs. A lot of you listening have
Mm.
very intense jobs, but everybody has 20 minutes to get up and move their body a little bit. Right? So I'd recommend you do it. I tell you the story to say, keep posting, because you'll have that
Mm.
impact on many more people. And 4 years later, you'll have a guy like me saying what an impact you had. This guy doesn't know me. But if I ever meet him, that's the only thing I'm going to talk to him about, because he changed my life. So I appreciate you and the breath of fresh air that you're bringing to the world. You've had a really interesting career journey. We were talking a little bit about this before we hit record, but you went from Procter to Reckitt to IKEA. Now, these couldn't be three more different companies. Talk to me a little bit about that journey of the things you picked up along the way. And, particularly going from Procter to Reckitt and then Reckitt to IKEA, you had to undo probably a lot of muscle and then leverage some muscle. So just
Yeah.
share a little bit of that story. I think it's just a fascinating career journey so far.
Look, I think there's nothing better than Procter in terms of getting an education, right? Somebody
Yeah.
once told me when I started, and this is one of the reasons I joined, go working at Procter in insights or marketing is like getting paid to go to Harvard, right? Because you're learning the foundations of everything. From a P&G standpoint, it's just you get the foundations of everything, right? You get all the ABCs lined up, and it's the education and the teaching and whatever is incredible. And I learned more at P&G than I ever learned of my 5 years at university, right? Because it's contextualized learning and it's relevant and you're connecting and building and so forth, and it's real. And that was great because, as we are talking about a little bit before, it gave the real basics of like, how do you analyze data and how do you ask people questions and how do you do all those kind of foundational things, which is super important. That I think, honestly, a lot of insights people don't have today because everything's like automated these days. So you miss that like primary things. Um, but then I loved it. But then at the same time, I love learning, but I even more love doing. And whilst P&G is a brilliant company, and look at their stock price, they're clearly a brilliant company, and every competitor is like trying to learn from them, and still to this day, it is very big and it's very layered, right? It's very structured in that way. Whereas I'm a very outside the box. I hate working. If you give me a box, I'll break it and I'll redo it
You
again.
want to be in a
I
box.
want to create a box instead of being a box. And then I went to Reka one day because I was super comfortable at Procter learning. I was like, there's enough learning. I want to go start doing. And Procter is great because they teach you everything about like marketing and insight, and your career's developed and you're taken care of and the next role's lined up. I wanted to go to a company where it wasn't taken care of. and I had to sort things out for myself, right? Where it was like, and yes, Reckitt has career management and they have development and so forth, but not like P&G.
It's
Reckitt is
a
very
different
much like a
business.
very entrepreneurial, if you have a thought, go do it, right?
Yeah.
Type of very entrepreneurial culture, but a very different type of culture. P&G was very people, and maybe in the context of Asia that I worked as well, it was very people and very that kind of way. Reckitt London was like extremely performance, right? Very like go and do and very sales and P&L. And I wanted to flip and on the spectrum of culture in terms of like people performance, sales, brand, etc., it was like the opposite side, right? And I wanted to flip and learn how to work when nobody was going to help me figure out how to work. And I wanted to learn the performance culture, right? I wanted to learn how to take care of myself and sort of be entrepreneurial and self-driven and get things done. And Reckitt was an amazing school for that, right? Super. I love Reckitt. I'm still Reckitt in my heart and DNA as well as Procter a bit. Um, but then Reckitt was incredible because then I could learn so much about sort of data, insight, analytics, marketing, and the entrepreneurial spirit and how to get things done. It was really the how in that type of culture. And then after a while, again, I became super comfortable. And I had been comfortable, right? I think comfort is like the enemy of all of us because as soon as you're comfortable, you go backwards, right? It's like the sitting on the couch
True.
analogy. I'm never comfortable in a gym, but I am comfortable on a couch, right? And I know one's better for my health than the other. So I'm going to go for the discomfort, right? Um, I
That's a
got
good point.
comfortable again and everything was perfect and great because I had great people around me and great bosses. But then I wanted to get uncomfortable again, right? And then IKEA, again, it's a private company, it's a Swedish company, it's a furniture retail company. It's a franchisor, franchisee, extremely different to Reckitt or P&G. And then the cultural lens just flipped again, right, in terms of how to
Big time.
work. And IKEA has helped because there's a big data analytics team with me that are fantastic. And I'm learning, you and I are joking about, I'm learning day to day what data analytics more and more is in this space. Um, but taking the pieces of PNG in Asia and then Reckitt in the UK and Amsterdam and then pieces of IKEA, blending it together, and then you create more of a whole of yourself. So that's what I always love. Instead of staying at one company for like 20, 30 years where you become part of the DNA and it's very hard to adapt, working at different countries in different roles, in different regions, in different companies, you're just evolving yourself as a
Yeah.
person and as a professional and then how you apply that professional learning into your personal life as well, because you learn as a human being through the different contexts that you work in. So, yeah.
I love it. Something you said, it dawns on me probably why I naturally enjoy talking to you. You're constantly wanting to learn and get uncomfortable.
Mm.
And I guess just a philosophical thought. I'm the same way. I happen to be trying to build something. So every quarter, the job's just different. So I haven't gotten bored yet, but I used to work for Kantar before
Mm.
this. And I was done working by 3 because work wasn't hard. So I played a lot of golf, I guess. I don't really like golf. So I guess my question is, this is just a philosophical question. Do you think everybody innately has a curious desire to improve, or some people don't? And the reason I ask is there's a lot of people that I think my philosophical thought is everybody's great at something and everybody has intrinsic motivation. Maybe they're just not in the environment. But I'd love your thoughts because you just seem naturally intrinsically motivated to better yourself every day.
I think everybody defines better as something as different, right? And as you said, I
Yeah.
think everybody has a different gift or skill or passion that's innately there. It's like the whole nature nurture debate you could take there. I'm a
Yeah.
believer in you're naturally something, right? You have a gift or a capability or a talent. And then the nurture part comes on and either finesses that or doesn't through that journey as well. So I think everybody has a natural tendency for something philosophically myself. It's a matter of is the environment around it getting the best out of what that is, right? And maximizing in that area because everybody has a passion. And I think the key is finding that passion and sort of moving. And this is why I kind of love the generation that we're in now. I think if I look at like my parents' generation back in the day, it wasn't a bit like this because I would argue that a lot of us, and in our context or in my context, we're privileged, right? We're born into a place, and I'm born into a place where I don't have to like fight to put food on the table every day, right? We're so privileged, and I know many people in the world do, but I am privileged in that. So then myself and my kids, we can then ask ourselves a question of, okay, now that my basic needs are met, what do I really enjoy doing? And what am I passionate about doing? And then going in that area. Um, And I think it's the same for a lot of people. It's about how do we help people to find that passion? Because I think if you do what you love, and you'll always find
Correct.
a better way of doing it because you're applying yourself. But if you do something that's, just for the money or just for this, I mean, you're not passionate about, that's going to dwindle at some point, right? And go down over time. So it's a matter of balance. And I think you and I, as managers or leaders, I think a lot of our job, like tons of our job, is beyond the technical operational. It's how do we get the best out of people and not give them the passion, but understand their passion and then harness and nurture that in the way that then complements the whole. So, and hopefully their passion links with what you need as an organization. And then it's a really good ecosystem.
A lot to love in what you said. I mean, I think there is a generational difference. I think we were probably both raised by baby boomers. Interesting to position this as, Australian American. I don't think the generations are too different. Obviously different cultures, but I grew up with hardworking parents, as did my wife, but it was, I have a job and I'm thankful I have a job, and I would never question that. And even though I'm miserable, I'm still going to do it. And I think
Yeah.
in some ways, it might have been easier to be a leader back then. But I'd much rather live in a world where people are thoughtful of what am I actually interested in.
Mm.
And I would tell you this, like on my worst day, work's about the money.
Mm.
Only on my worst day. On the best days, it's about the problems, it's about the people. But I think, you said something about finding what people are good at and harnessing that in the environment they're in. I don't think there's a single time in my many, many years of leading people where the relationship between the person and the company ended for anything other than their purpose and the company's purpose fell out of harmony, and there wasn't either the right leadership in place or the right infrastructure to pull that back in, or it was just naturally time for those people to part ways. It's very rarely you attribute it to performance or all these HR words, but I don't know that is the case.
But even that, right? Even somebody who's not performing, it may not be because it's not their performance, maybe because it's not their passion or it's not their area.
Correct.
It's something, right? And so it's about really realigning. It's like somebody once asked me, it's like, how do you go about the process of, how would you let somebody go? It's not an easy thing to do as a manager. And all of us are managers who have done it before. None of us like the
It
process, right?
stops.
At all.
Yep.
It's one of the toughest things that a leader will ever have to do. But I find that through the process, if you're able to find a situation where somebody you're letting go, you're able to bring them into a place where there naturally is better for them, whether it's because of maybe they're on a path which isn't their good natural path. Well, then it's not a matter of like saying, you're bad, I'm going to let you go. It's a matter of let's find the right path for you that therefore you'll thrive on to actually work within, right? And I think then as a leader, it's shifting the mindset out of you didn't meet your KPIs versus what's right for you in that, because then you're going to get the best out of people and it's the best for them as well. And I would love to be managed like that. And I think other people as well. So
Yeah, and I think for all of you people managers, this isn't as hard to do if you're not doing it. You got to get to know people. Like we were talking, I was telling Joel the story. My 8-year-old son had so many questions as to why I'm going to Boston today to spend time with a company to do a partnership with them. He goes, I don't understand why you can do that, why you can't do that on Zoom. And Joel sort of said exactly what I was thinking, which is you mean like shake hands, look each other in the face, get to know each other. We talked a little bit about on your exercise journey, AI. This is the shit that's going to develop talent, that's going to make you better, whether you're leading people or working in a team. It's your ability to understand each other and how we're different and how those things converge. I think it's a really interesting time. It's a time where bad people leaders, but bad defined as maybe that's not their journey. And they're just there for the performance, not understanding the person that's doing the performance. I think they're going to get exposed pretty quickly.
yeah, I mean, I think that also goes back to your point about career, right? It's like a lot of people change job these days because they want to either learn a hard skill,
Yep.
or they want to get promoted, or they jump a title, or they jump whatever. And I'm not against titles, right? I've come from companies we're talking about IKEA and how we don't have titles. A lot of companies do. So I understand the pros and cons of both. But for me, I've never left a company because of a hard skill or because of a thing. I've always changed because I wanted to learn something different and how to work with people differently. As I said, P&G, Reckitt, IKEA, 3 different cultures. So it's about how to work with people. Because then out of the 9 to 5, that's what you take into your life, right? Is how you adapt to. That's why I love being an expat. We've been an expat for nearly 16 years now, right? And moved across countries because you work with different cultures and different ages and different people and different diversities and different companies, and you're learning so much about who you are and how
Yeah.
to adapt to other people and how to bring that in. And I think that's a lifelong skill, right? Beyond the, what's good for my title or whatever for the next jump company that I work for or whatever it may be. So it's an interesting lesson, I think, as a manager, but also as a person and professional in terms of career management too.
Yeah, I think it's something for people to start to lean into. And I do think that what you described is that generational shift. We both know Tony Costella. Tony was on this podcast and he said something about like gripping the essence of a 7-year-old's curiosity and like how do you keep that? And again, someone says something to you, and I just remember like, fuck, Tony's right. Like, how do you keep people curious when a lot of us grew up in societies where it was because it's always been done this way? They used to bloodlet people, and if they didn't make it, it was because
Mm.
they were weak. And then some smart person questioned that and was like, "But why do we do that again?"
Yeah.
So it's and sometimes it's really hard as a father because like my kids will ask questions that I appear to know that it appears simple, but 3 whys later, I oftentimes find myself being like, you know what, buddy, I don't understand that enough.
That happens to me every day. I'm like, that's a really good question. Go ask your mother. She might know instead.
That's a good deflection.
Yeah.
Sometimes I throw Google under the bus. Although with all the algorithms, you never know what's actually true.
Exactly. Yeah, and then you don't know. Yeah, yeah.
So you touched on a paradox about 15 minutes ago that I want to unpack with you because I think we might have something in common on this. So I wouldn't describe myself as naturally a leader, probably more naturally a doer. And similar to you, I like to learn. And so getting into people leadership was about understanding how to do that, if I could do that. But it required me to really change my instinctual behavior more than you probably ever know. There's sometimes where I'm like, just fucking do that. And I can't say that, obviously.
Mm.
How do you balance the fact that last week you had a quiet week and you were so excited because you could think and do, with the fact that you're the boss and a lot of people come to you and need counsel and thoughts? Like, how do you balance that tension, your natural instinct and sort of your growth agenda and your job ultimately?
Yeah, I think when you find the balance, I think you get super energized by it, right? But I think it takes time to find the balance in there. I learned a while ago, I did this exercise where I looked at my week and I figured out within that week what gives me energy, like what am I passionate about and where am I spending my time? And then what do I need to contribute in the role that I have? My company pays me personally for something, right? To
Right.
do something. So what am I required to do as part one piece of the total company puzzle? And then what gets me passion within there? I looked at my week and I'm like, you know what? This, and this, neither of the two or one of the two, I sort of minimize that out. These types of things, they sort of meet those two criteria. So I'm going to make sure I spend a lot of time around there. And then I naturally, and that was a bit of an exercise that was mechanical at the time, but then I naturally now do that over time where
In your
if
head.
something demands the time that I naturally think, does it fit one of these two? I don't do it, or I delegate to someone who does have passion for it or gives them energy for it, then I'll give it to them as opposed to me, for example, or they're more skilled at. So it's a matter of finding that. Then I think, as you said, I'm a massive doer. Like as a strength finder, I'm an achiever type of area. Like I get value out of it's delivered, it's
You
done.
love a dopamine release.
The theory kills me, right? Like as I told you before, I've been doing like some university stuff now, and like sitting in a classroom is like I need to pump so much coffee to get through, right? Because the sitting and thinking and reading and being told is like it's not my thing because I'll have to learn by doing. But then I think it's that balance again. Then finally, I think, as I said before, it kind of touches on the point before. For me, I see my role in this as, I love insights. I think it's great, but I don't think I'm naturally an insights person for life, right? I'm not like a born insights person. When I did P&G Insights, it was more of an accident. I never really intended to do it, and I just never left it, right? It's another story. What actually motivates me intrinsically is people and helping people and enabling people and seeing people find that passion and drive that passion through and really succeed in what they do, because that is sustainable. That's growing leaders, which beyond my time, they will still be there and they'll still be driving. And if I can make one person in my team passionate about something or really happy, that not only affects them and the company, but you know what? It affects their wife or their husband or their kids, because then they go home passionate and happy. And they're a better holistic person for it, right? Beyond what I get out of it, it's better for that nature as well. So then I look at my week and I look at it and say, yes, I'm a leader that has to do, but then how do I do? But how do I also lead through people and in the process help people through that? And that's what gives me tons of passion and motivation for it. And then I find the right balance in there. Then it enables me to actually do it. So, but then again, it's surrounding myself with people that are a balance of doers and thinkers, because then you have that whole complement too.
Yeah. I love how intentionally self-aware you are. I think a lot of people are running so hard at probably the third bucket. So
Mm.
what gives you energy? What do you need to do? And what sucks the energy? And by the end of the day, people don't have time. That isn't maybe just work, right? Like in
Mm.
my life, I leave that little white door and I'm dad and I'm line cook and, you know, other things. Um, but I guess I want to ask you to give some advice. So we're listening. Everybody should take your advice here and do some codification. And the mechanical work is the only way to get habitual output, right? So I used to do this thing where I would be like, what energy am I bringing to a meeting? Because I'm more naturally a doer than a leader. And after like 3 months, I was like, oh, I'm just naturally, today I'm listening or I'm governing or I'm coaching or whatever the thing is. You work in a big company, you know this all too well. There's a CC culture, there's a cover your ass culture, there's a need to be there to be seen culture. What advice do you give people for, okay, projects that are giving you energy and strategically important, things that you just need to do versus noise? And how do you go about saying no to noise? I guess is really the blunt question I'm asking you.
Noise eventually goes away, right? At one point as well, because noise is usually created by people who shout the loudest.
Yeah.
And then you hope that at some point that goes down. So I've worked in a lot of organizations before where the people who shout the loudest get their way. And you can't ignore the loud voice because it's loud, right? And there's noise behind it. But it's a matter of how to sort of quench that a little bit, but then focus on something else. For me, the really big key in it is, and I always do this with the team as well, is it's a matter of planning and prioritization. Especially in the insights or marketing business type of world, you're going to do 1,000 things and be pulled in 1,000 directions, right? And if you think about a job like mine as well, the way that we set up insights is from the supply chain all the way at the beginning, all the way through to customer, right? So it's like end to end type of thing. So you can get pulled into conversations all across, right? And then across business units and countries or whatever it may be. So you're naturally going to get pulled all the way over. But I always equate it to the analogy of you've got to be anchored into something, right? And firm on something. So we start the year very clearly with here are our priorities for the year, right? Built up, top down, and bottom up. So it's merged in well. And then every person, including myself, will have maybe one or two things that we have to nail in that, right? Through the year as well. Now, you can't nail 5 things, right? You can only nail one, maybe two, and that's it in a period of time.
That's
So
right.
then it's always a matter of everything is noise if you haven't nailed that one thing, right? And we can realign about whatever that may be, what that one thing is that's strategically important and you get passion for and the company needs and so forth. And it's getting anchored into that. Because then it's not a matter of saying when the conversation comes, no, because I don't want to, or no, because I don't have time to, but it's no, because this is the priority. And if this becomes a bigger priority than that, then I can do that. But let's have a prioritization discussion, right? It's not about my intention to or desire to, that's irrelevant. It's about what's important and how do I reprioritize. And that becomes more objective and factual, I find in it as well. And I think it gives you clarity as a person and a motivation to be able to deliver and move forward to as well.
It's good advice. I mean, I think I would probably have said the same thing. I mean, people I think struggle with what appears to be a hard conversation, but having super clear priorities and relative prioritization discussions is actually the only way you can get through it.
Yes.
I've personally been doing this for years. I have a document I write once a quarter. What am I driving? What am I helping? And once a week I look at it, and that's where I spend my time. I'm not spending my time on other things. Other than, BAU one-on-ones, there is say
Yeah.
60, 70% of anybody's job that's going to be bucket two. I just need to do it because you pay me to do it. Or if you're a people leader, don't be the guy or gal who doesn't take the employees one-on-one seriously. That's their time. That's like literally their time. That your job is to make sure they have clear goals and then get on their side of the table and help them achieve them, not, bark orders. And I think people need the permission to say, I can do that if we reprioritize. And I see it in our business, and we're obviously much smaller. It's like, well, and I have to be careful what I say, because like I'm naturally an assertive dude, and it's like, well, boss said so, so I got to do it. And I'm like, no, I just had an idea. Shit, like I didn't mean for you to stop what you were doing.
Yeah.
Really, it's a really interesting challenge, because the more context shifting you ask a person to do, the more their cognitive load is under pressure, the less they're going to execute that number one thing, and that the company wants the number one thing. So really interesting. Like,
it's not an easy topic. And I think if anybody cracks it, that's fantastic. They can tell me. But I think all of us have little tricks and tips here and there to manage it, right? And it's a matter of what works for you. So
it's one of the reasons I like doing this podcast, because I still have editorial control. So I only interview people and I learn from them.
You can beat me out a little bit. Good.
But we've broken an Inside Insights record today. Do you know what the record is? The cool record is, I sent Joel a discussion guide 3 weeks ago. My family got stuck with a stomach bug. I have asked you a total of 0 questions on the discussion guide today. Now that is a good conversation, my friends. But everything we've talked to is so valuable, because it's how you as a person show up intentionally that's going to make insights work or not work.
And I think, as I said before, insights is a tool, right? I love insights. They're great. I've done it for many years, but it's a tool, right? Yeah. They exist to help a business achieve a goal. Yeah. And the moment that they don't help the business achieve the goal, you shouldn't have them. As any good P&L boss would be, you take out what's not there, right? And I think that's a good accountability for us, because it makes us always focused on the so what behind what we do as well. But honestly, I always say this to my team as well, I think 30% of our time should be spent on the actual insights and analytics, 70% on driving it in and changing, right? Because of the so what, the action, the whatever it may be. So it's like a lot of people say, you know what, I did a great job in my year because I delivered this presentation. Cool. So you did 30% of your job. What about the other 70%, right? Like, what did the business do? And what did the consumers see because you delivered that presentation? Now, because if that doesn't happen, why'd you deliver the presentation? There's no point, right? You might as well have done something else that you could have taken all the way there. And that 70% is not necessarily technical skill, right? That's, as you said before, why you're going to Boston. It's the human skill. It's the softer side. It's the relationship side. It's the managing side. It's the understanding the business and the so what, the so why, right? The really action part of it. And I think us as insights people, and yes, there'll be so much around AI competence and technical, but as you said, that's like raising the floor a little bit. You got to keep relevant through those places. I think the true differentiator is just how you work with people and what impact you make within it, right? And that's the soft skills trump the hard skills. I think the hard skills I can buy, right? I get an amazing agency like Zapier to go do amazing stuff on research. That's fantastic. I can't buy soft skills. Yeah.
No.
You have to develop those soft skills, right, over time, or get your team to develop over time. And so that's why I think we've naturally talked more on this podcast more about the leadership part than the technical sort of platform part, because as you said, in the next 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, that's what's always going to be there. And that's what's super critical for any business.
Yeah, that'll be the constant. And I think you're right. I like that 70-30 shift. And, it's a whole separate podcast of unpacking the from to of how you get there in different orgs and whatnot. But it's key, particularly on the kind of manufacturing, retail, brand side of things, where no vendor is ever going to have the full context of your business. No matter how much you want to say that, they will. So I got a piece of advice from Elaine. Elaine. I know Elaine. Hi, Elaine, if you're listening. Anyways, I was listening to a QBR my team was doing with Elaine. It's years ago now. And she goes, I don't give a shit. She didn't say this bluntly, but this is what I took away. I don't give a shit how many surveys y'all ran. I want to know if you help me sell more X. And it was like such a great lesson for the 8 people at Zappy hearing that. But it's the same thing inside the shop. The brand manager is actually trying to move units or get more people in the store or get more people to follow that promotion. How do we follow through to value, I think is an important lesson.
Yeah.
This was fun. I enjoyed this. I'm out of time with you, my man. So I got to go. This is like a sad state of affairs. Everybody, thank you for listening. I hope that you got as energized from listening to Joel as I did talking to him. So a lot of fun. And I look forward to catching up again soon, my friend.
Likewise. Cheers, mate.